in light of the recent news of the earthquakes that hit Japan this past weekend, a lot of my friends and family have been asking for my take on it, what I think about it, and how it's going to impact my trip this summer. First and foremost, this is really horrible. It's the worst recorded earthquake in Japan's history. It's the 5th worst in recorded history for the entire world. They're still not sure quite how strong it was, the initial one that hit Sendai on Saturday morning, I believe. And they're saying it's an 8.9 to a 9. Initially it was a 7.6, but as more results have been compared and contrasted, it's been proven that it was worse. I've been watching the news the past several days. NHK, the BBC, even ABC, trying to get apprised of the situation, understand what's going on. So that's probably why that, and being that I'm a Japanese major, a lot of people have been asking me, what's going on, what's happening in that part of the world. What I know of right now is the earthquake happened, the Asiatic plate and the Pacific plate. The Asiatic plate went under the Pacific plate in the ocean, which bumped up the wave, which was what caused the tsunami. It was about 80 miles off the coast of Sendai, which is north of Tokyo, near the Hokkaido region. The tsunami happened within 10 minutes of the earthquake, so there wasn't a lot of time for those people to evacuate the area, and many of those coastal towns were obliterated, and it was a very scary situation. And 4 trains are missing, because the trains, I'm not sure if anyone knows, run along the coast, and so as of right now 4 trains are missing, which is very scary. Whole towns are missing, if that puts any perspective into this. Entire towns were obliterated by the tsunami and by the earthquakes. There's been more than one earthquake that has hit. There have been several in Nagano. There's been some off the coast of Tokyo. I think we're up to 4 now that have hit. They've been minor. They've been 6s and 7s, but that's still 6s and 7s and earthquakes in a time where Japan really doesn't need anything else. What I've gathered from the news sources and the friends I do have in Tokyo, the damage hasn't been as bad as it could have been. The city has been fairly keeping up with things. But unfortunately, as I'm sure anyone who doesn't live under a rock, or even if you do live under a rock, I'm sure you know, the Fukushima nuclear power plants are melting down or having problems, which is a big scary thing right now. The initial evacuation area was 5 kilometers from the number 2 plant, and then 10 from the number 1, and then it is now up to 30. There are radiation levels above 400, which is pretty bad, around the number 4 nuclear plant reactor. Put that in perspective, it's been proven that if you live in an area where it's 100 or above for a year, it'll cause cancer. That it's 400 is saying something, and a lot of people are afraid it's going to be another Chernobyl like in Russia. So that's really, really frightening. It's weighing heavily in any decisions, I'm sure, that the study abroad office is making, and whether to cancel or continue. On that note, as of right now, I haven't received any word that this trip of mine is going to be canceled, as Tokyo hasn't sustained nearly as much damage as Sendai. And what damage they have sustained is they're prepared for. Japan is one of the most tectonically active places on the earth, and so it's sad to say, but they are very, very prepared for earthquakes and tsunami. It's played a big part in their history, and even in their daily lives. One blogger that I was reading said, there are an average of 200 minor quakes every year, and the Japanese people just know how to go through it. The scary thing, though, for this blogger is he remembers he's in Tokyo, and, at first he thought it was, just a normal shaking, like he's used to being a student in Tokyo, but then the Japanese were like, this is not a normal earthquake, and that's when it started to hit. From what I gather, it shook things for about 2.5 minutes, that first initial one. There have been rolling blackouts because of it. And keep in mind that it is still winter over there, and it's very cold, and people are without power and electricity, and so hypothermia is also playing an issue as well as exposure. It's even been snowing. There are fires in Sendai, Miyagi Prefecture, but there's a lot of damage, and so right now, people are like, what are you going to do? Are you still going? Right now, I don't know. I honestly don't know. It depends on how things go. And the other question I've been being asked is, as a Japanese major, how is this affecting you? And my initial response is, as a person, how is it affecting you? I mean, as a Japanese major, I guess I'm closer to the situation than a lot of my peers. It's deeply painful. I've grown attached to this country, even though I hadn't been there before, but I have friends who are there still, and, my senseis, they're Japanese, and I can't imagine, as painful it is for me to watch, a country that I'm so attached to fall apart. I can't imagine how painful and horrible this must be for them, imminently more so than any pain I might feel. So that's been hard. I'm on spring break right now, and so I haven't been to a Japanese class yet, but I predict it's going to be very quiet and solemn. A lot of us Japanese majors are kind of in shock. It's something we know about Japan, that it is tectonically active, but it's still jarring. It's kind of like Katrina for the United States. It was extremely jarring to know how vulnerable even the United States is to Mother Nature. It's one of those concrete things in this world that we cannot change, and I think that's another reaction that a lot of people are having. We're seeing our mortality, if, you give me that much, we're seeing how vulnerable we are, and it's a very scary thought. There have also been some extremely hurtful things said. I'd like to address them now, because they really upset me. There are a lot of people who are saying, this is comeuppance for World War II and Pearl Harbor. And my response is, excuse me, time to go back to your history books. That is what Hiroshima and Nagasaki were for. They were the A-bombs that we dropped on them so we could stop the war. Go back to your history books and read something, because that is ridiculous and that is insane. And those things make me upset. Or the people who are saying, Japan is a godless nation, they're worshipping Buddha, or, other gods, and therefore they deserve to die. That is also extremely culturally insensitive. Go to college, go to high school, take a culture class, learn something. That's ridiculous. First off, Buddha isn't a god. He's a deified human being who just attained enlightenment. It's a way of life. It's not a religion unless you make it one. Second, what? Seriously? Then how do you explain New Zealand? They're a bunch of Christians. Hello. But I digress. Those are the two main arguments. There's also rumors that Tokyo Disneyland, what's going to happen? I think there's a bit more important things than Tokyo Disneyland and whether, the Little Mermaid is actually under sea now. As you can see, that makes me quite angry. But as I've been watching things, it's not just these things that come and make me mad. There's a lot of hope. The Japanese, watching them pull together. There was a very touching story about a little baby girl who was found in the Sendai region. Sendai, once again, was a place that was obliterated, and she was found alive. There's been a 90-year-old man who was washed out to sea, and he survived for 4 days by clinging to a roof. A 70-year-old woman, similar story. I mean, these stories are coming up, and it's beautiful to hear about them. Especially, there's a small town that they thought everyone had died. That's 9,500 people, and they actually found them all alive. A little worse for wear, because like I said, it's winter. But it's amazing. It's times like these where you're like, this is what humanity is. It's surviving and pulling together. And that's what Japan is doing now. I mean, that's all I can really say about it. I'm also encouraging you guys, at this time, donate to me if you want, but I encourage you more to donate to Japan. I have links under the video, and at the end of the video, I'll have more links too. To places where you can donate. The Red Cross is a big one. They need all the help they can. They have 92 hospitals in Japan. Donate to them. That's basically the biggest one I can think of. And there's others in my links that I've been looking and researching, and anything you can do to help. It's times like this we need to pull together too. Japan has been there for a lot of people. They were there for New Zealand. They were there for us in Katrina. They were there for a lot of people. And I think now is the time to say, hey, we appreciate you too, and help out. Not only that, but it's pretty bad, guys. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. But I do have a fun story. One of the guys I follow on a blog, he told me this story about this old man, and it's called a sento. It's a public bath, and normally they're electric now, but there's this one in Tokyo that's powered by wood, and the old-fashioned way, and he always cuts wood every day, every morning, to get the baths ready. And I guess this morning, he was like, oh, crap, when the earthquake was going on, but as soon as it was over, he looked around and said, okay, and he went back to cutting wood, and that is the symbol of what Japan is, and its people. Sasuga Japan, Sasuga Nihon. It's what Japan was founded on, this spirit, this indomitable spirit, samurai spirit, what have you. And so, yeah, that's what I think about this issue. People keep asking me, these are my thoughts. I'll probably have more later as situations develop, but I'll try to keep you apprised. So